Welcome to today's session where we're going to be speaking about how open source designs are affecting sustainability in Singapore. Joining me today is Asher Ling, the Managing Director for the Princeton Digital Group in Singapore.
Hi, Steve.
So we're going to be talking a lot today, Asher, about several different things. How hyperscalers have impacted the data center designs, what's happening currently in Southeast Asia, and sustainability overall, and how enterprises can benefit from open source designs. So why don't you do just a quick favor, give us kind of the state of the business for the data center industry in Singapore and in Southeast Asia.
Sure, Steve. Happy to do that. I'm sure a lot of the audience listening into this session would have heard that Singapore currently has a moratorium on our data center industry. And it would be very helpful if I could just kind of explain the situation of where we are in. Singapore is one of the preeminent locations for data center clients and operators, and for the world's largest tech companies who want to put the data here. In fact, Singapore itself probably supplies 50 to 60% of total data center supply in Southeast Asia. Over the past 10, 15, 20 years, we have really emerged as one of the most attractive locations because of our great government support, great subsea cables, a very well-educated working class, professionals, and the entire ecosystem has really just flourished around this market. But at the same time, Singapore is a very, very small island with very limited land mass and also not too cost-effective renewable sources of energy. As such, the Singapore government has come to realize that there is a need to take a pause to review the types of data centers that they allow us to design and build and operate in Singapore, primarily because Singapore has also committed to the Paris Accord, and we do have a peak emission target by 2030, and also the granted target at 2050. While very challenging, it has also propelled us to think outside the box in terms of the way we should invest, design, and build data centers. And I think, Steve, that was really one of the reasons why you and I really connected almost 2 years ago, pre-COVID, and started talking about the OCP, at least from my perspective, how it should impact the way I think of newer ways to design data centers and to operate them. But it's really quite a journey. Digital transformation has accelerated tremendously. And where we are today really is at a point where this need to really accelerate our thinking of how we provide sustainable data services, infrastructure services to the end customers becomes so important. And so I think today's topic is really very, very exciting and pertinent to our future in the years ahead.
So as you looked at open compute and the designs, give a couple of examples of what made open designs, or what makes open designs more attractive for a data center like yourself.
We're very impressed at how we could take some of those ideas into consideration as we are developing our design. For example, the need to have to cater for fully loaded racks to be able to be delivered right into the data halls, whether with raised floor or without raised floor. Having that flexibility when we're designing it, that is a very important consideration. And as you can imagine, if we're building a multi-story data center in a land-scarce location, how we design those kind of civil structural considerations are very important very early on, even before any of the other racks actually are coming in.
Yeah, and that's how the community has translated what some of the companies are doing at scale, and then applying them to guidelines that the operator can use. For example, with the new version of OpenRack, which is the Open Compute Rack that will be coming out end of this year, we have multiple companies coming together to create a common rack design that's going to be even more efficient, that's going to cater for some advanced cooling techniques, rear door heat exchange, immersion cooling. So you have Google, Microsoft, Facebook all coming together with one common rack design. And then with that, we have another community that takes those designs and says, all right, well, if I'm a data center operator, how can I better deploy that rack within my infrastructure? And then we put together these colo guidelines or data center operator guidelines that then you can take and help implement for the next wave of companies that are going to be deploying that rack in your infrastructure. I've got another question on the resourcing piece, because it takes a different set of skills now coming out of, say, university or the workplace to have an opinion about, have a skill set toward sustainability and efficiency in the data center world. So what is your opinion of the way that the education system is set up to train the next generation of data center engineers in Singapore to accommodate for sustainability?
It's a great question, Steve. I think more and more so everyone, including the institutes of higher learnings, are very aware of the need for sustainability. It is a very new field, to be honest, and even corporates are still trying to get our heads around it. Traditional disciplines of electrical, mechanical, civil structural, or even system designs are things that the universities know really well. I think what we're trying to do is to help explain to the colleges how a data center would integrate these different disciplines into a operational product, which is a data center, and use that to serve customers. And now, what we've been doing for the past 15, 20 years needs to be radically changed. And so when we can teach and allow the university students to understand the problem statement we have, they would then be able to go back and rethink that, hey, maybe there is a different way to do power transmission or to cool something, maybe to come up with a separate type of refrigerant or, I don't know, different types of medium that could help make cooling more efficient. There are a lot of bright young minds out there, and I truly believe that if we could work very closely, with these bright young minds at universities, sharing with them very openly, number one, this is what we're doing by putting all these traditional disciplines together to have an output, which is data center, and then have them go back and think about how they could think out of the box, because I think both you and me have spent enough time in this space that sometimes we are very locked up in our thinking. And someone from outside of the industry may look at it and say, hey, there's something different. And I think that's why that openness in communicating and collaborating is so meaningful to me, Steve.
Yeah, the way that it's going to be interesting to watch this transformation in the education sector. So I was reading just recently, we have Microsoft that announced that they're getting ready to build 100 new data centers, crazy number. You had Apple announced recently that they're going to be spending almost $450 billion on data center and infrastructure moving forward. So what is your opinion about whether or not the market could sustain so many new data centers coming up? And what is your role in helping to work within that ecosystem?
I think each and every one of us listening to this would agree that us and our family members, we're all guilty of consuming a lot more data than we would have 10 years ago. And I'm sure our children and the generations that come beyond us would, we take data generation and data analysis and data compute and storage for granted as a very symbiotic part of our lives that we don't even think about it anymore. But the reality of the fact is there are large physical infrastructure, buildings, and power generation sitting somewhere in some place in the world that is running that internet that keeps our lives going on. And Princeton Digital Group believes that we are very, very well positioned in Asia Pacific with all the data centers we have in Singapore, China, India, Indonesia, and hopefully a few more countries that we'll announce soon to help support this drive going forward in a sustainable way, in a way that is sustainable, maintainable, and responsible to the global climate.
So it's great to have you as part of the Open Compute community. Tell us a little bit about why you would join and open source community based all the way in America.
Thanks, Steve. I was very privileged to be invited, by you and Facebook to attend that first inaugural event at the Facebook, office, and came to interact with some of the gears and everything that you guys shared up there. And it got me really excited, thinking to myself, if there is an open community where everyone just openly shares and contributes and be able to kind of work hand in hand for the better of the industry as a whole, where else can we find something like that as a global initiative? So I was very excited, and we worked over the past 2 years towards where we are today. And Steve, thank you very much for kind of inviting us on board and working behind the scenes and pulling together the local ecosystem. I was pretty excited at first, and I realized that the ecosystem here is a little bit nascent at that stage, and so we
Yes.
wanted to work really together to see how we could build this center of excellence, or where somebody can just come in into a data center environment, but be able to physically touch an OCP rack with all the OCP servers and possibly even plug in and try it out. We felt that impetus to educate our end customers and on the possibilities out there. And I know you, Steve, have been doing a lot of preaching and out there advocating for it. And so with that vision in mind, we work towards setting up something in Princeton Digital Group's data center here in Singapore. And I'm very excited for what we have. That looks like it will be going live in a few months' time.
And one of the other areas that you're very focused on is becoming OCP ready. And so a description of that OCP ready certification program, it's a set of guidelines that we have within OCP that a data center operator can do a self-assessment and become certified to deploy OCP hardware. And that means that they understand it, they know the way to optimize it within their facility. And there's a whole set of guidelines around white space, cooling, electrical, access, that your group is going to go through this certification, become OCP ready. And that allows those organizations worldwide to be able to say, all right, this company knows how to deploy open compute. They understand what OCP is, and they can help me optimize it within my infrastructure. So tell me a little bit about your goals around that OCP ready program and why that certification is important.
I think for the Singapore data center, we're definitely very advanced and far along on that. We think it's very meaningful as an initiative to show our commitment towards being part of this open compute community. We're also sharing with the rest of our group the OCP standards, OCP ready standards. We're looking at some of our other data centers in Indonesia. And also when we're building new data centers in India and China, these are things that I've asked my engineering team to take into consideration as we're building it out. I think as we move ahead, Steve, being a party that really bears sustainability and operational efficiency at the forefront of our design consideration will become one of the things that will differentiate an operator in the years ahead. And we're very excited, that OCP has kind of pulled the global community together. And we're very excited to be a part of that here in Asia, leading it in Singapore.
Well, on behalf of everybody at OCP, we want to welcome Princeton Digital Group to the community. Asher, looking forward to working with you and the entire team, and really appreciate your partnership on this.
Thank you, Steve. And it's a privilege for us in Princeton Digital Group to be part of the OCP initiative. And we look forward, to our collaboration and being an active member out here in Singapore.